Well, members of President Trump's administration have been accused of all manner of things, from domestic abuse to spying for the Russians. But here's an amazing one. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, former SEAL, accused of the worst sin of all, not loving diversity enough. A breaking report this week by CNN accused Zinke of seeking to hire the best people for jobs at the Interior Department without regard to their appearance. That was the chyron. Zinke angers by hiring the best. Very offensive. The report was denied, of course, by Zinke, but the left still reacted with horror. Kristen Clark is president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law, and she joins us now. Kristen, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So I know I can't speak for anyone else, but when I saw that CNN report that Ryan Zinke was daring to hire the best people, I thought, what is this country coming to? You know, hiring people on the basis of relevant criteria like experience or skill or commitment. I mean, that's just wrong, and I think you would agree with that.
No, we want people who are qualified and experienced, especially at the helm of our nation's most important federal agencies. But we also need to make sure that those agencies reflect the growing diversity of our country. And I'm not just talking about racial diversity. I'm talking about gender diversity and ethnic diversity. And at every turn with this administration, we've seen efforts to turn the clock back. We know that diversity is not a priority for this administration, whether we're talking about cabinet-level appointments or judicial appointments. This administration is one that has not placed a premium on diversity.
What do you think of the NFL?
Well,
you like the NFL?
That's a totally different context.
Oh, it is. But do the same standards apply there? I mean, why do they get a pass from the? No, this is a real question. Why do they get a pass on the diversity thing in the NFL? Is there a reason?
Well, when we look at the coaching ranks, there's a lot of work to do.
No, I'm talking about the players. No, slow down.
I'm underrepresented.
Great, I'm on your side. But the players, it's all male. It's disproportionately African American. Does that bother you?
The NFL is a sport, so is a male sport, so I'm not surprised that it's all male.
But does it bother you? I mean, why do they get a pass from the normal? Because their point is, like, we hire the best. And actually, I think the NFL really doesn't care what color you are. I mean, they just want the best players. And is that offensive when you watch it? Are you thinking, I can't watch this? They're not following the diversity rules.
What really bothers me is my taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars, going to support federal agencies that don't reflect the diversity of our country, Tucker.
What about when you fly on an airplane? I mean, do you think that airlines should apply the same diversity rules you're calling for here? That they shouldn't take the people who score the highest on the pilot tests, but that they should hire also on appearance, the way people look?
Every workplace, whether you're talking about
pilots
airlines
heart surgeons
or
too?
Federal agencies, should hire the best, but should place a premium on diversity. And
but which is more important, the way that you look or what you do, what you're capable of doing? So, like, when you're flying a plane, how important is it what you look like, your appearance?
Incredibly important, and it's also important that we have. It's also important that we place a premium on diversity, and the fact that we have people in this
administration. But diversity means appearance. It means what you look like. You're talking about the shallowest possible criterion. It's your literally your shade. That's what you're saying.
Well,
why is that more important than talent?
You know what matters, Tucker? What matters is that your white daughters and that my black son can turn on that TV and see an administration that reflects the diversity of our country. Gender diversity, racial diversity, ethnic diversity. And we're
what matters to me is that the government is run by competent people. And if they're all Pacific Islanders, I don't care where they're from. I don't care what they look like, because I don't think that what you look like is the most important thing, because I'm not shallow.
President Trump.
But you're arguing that it is, and I'm wondering why.
President Trump's appointees have been virtually all white and all male. And we haven't seen anything this remarkable since the Reagan years. And
but I'm just wondering, I mean, you're just not getting anywhere with me, because if you can argue that one of them is doing a bad job, I'll agree with you. And actually, I think some of them are not that impressive. I'll be completely blunt with you. But it has nothing to do with what they look like. Because, again, I'm not a shallow person. I don't judge people on their appearance, just as I don't judge books on their covers. I try to get a little deeper than that. And I'm wondering why, as a society, we've decided the shallowest possible measure is the most important. Do you ever stop and ask yourself that?
Diversity is one among a number of factors that this administration should be taking into account when it appoints cabinet-level positions all the way down. We want a federal government that reflects the diversity of our country.
But I wonder, by diversity, again, I just want to be totally clear. If you mean, like, diversity of skills, I'm totally with you. But when you were little, did you ever think you'd be arguing to judge people primarily on how they look?
You know, I'm talking about gender diversity. I'm talking about racial diversity, Tucker.
Okay,
89%
those are
of
outward
President
signs.
Trump's judicial nominees have been white male.
But are they bad?
White male. Many of them are horrible.
You're speaking a foreign language to me.
Nominee Peterson, who had to pull out because he knows nothing about how federal courts operate.
That's a problem. Look, I'm with you there. You should never hire incompetent people. I don't care what they look like. No incompetent people. I'm with you. Kristen, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Secretary. Meanwhile, Hazleton, Pennsylvania has changed an awful lot thanks to immigration. Elite neighborhoods, though, basically look like it's 1955. Why is that? We'll get to that in just a minute. We told you last night about the scandal swirling around the Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke. According to new reporting by CNN, Zinke may once have suggested in private that he still believes in the meritocracy. That would make him the last person in power in this country who does, so of course it was highly controversial. Through a spokesman, though, Zinke denied that slander. Of course he doesn't believe in hiring on merit, on the basis of who's more qualified or who has the most relevant experience or any of those bigoted skills-based criteria. At the Department of the Interior, they hire on the basis of genetics, on what people look like. Ryan Zinke believes in diversity, just like everybody else. But of course, no one believed him. In an op-ed for CNN today, Andre Perry of the Brookings Institution said that Zinke's preference for qualified people could, quote, threaten the security of the country. Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey recently returned from his federal corruption trial. Congratulations, Bob. Went even further than that. In a statement, Menendez accused Zinke of trying to create a, quote, lily-white department. Well, there's obviously no worse crime than that, white departments being prima facie immoral, something a mad scientist thought up. And of course, Menendez would know, himself being one of the single whitest members ever to serve in the U.S. Senate. He gets a pass on that, though, because whatever else you might say about Bob Menendez, he would never even consider hiring someone on the basis of relevant qualifications. Recently, we told you on this program about the wave of demographic change that has transformed the city of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. In the year 2000, Hazleton was less than 2% Hispanic. Today, thanks to mass immigration, Hazleton is majority Hispanic. More than half of the residents there speak a language other than English at home. Now, we got those numbers from a recent piece in National Geographic, which quoted lifelong Hazleton residents as saying they no longer recognized their own hometown. They didn't hate immigrants. Most Americans like immigrants. But this was too much change. In fewer than 20 years, the culture their parents and grandparents had built evaporated. They never asked for any of that. It was just imposed on them. They were bewildered, understandably. But not everyone understands or even cares. This morning, CNN ran a hit piece on that segment. Writer Ron Brownstein described it as, quote, an extraordinary screed against diversity, whatever that means. He suggested we were bigots for talking about the subject at all. This, of course, is how you bully people into being quiet while you permanently change their country. And usually it works because nobody wants the headache of that. But in this case, it's an important enough topic that we're going to go a little deeper on it. What happened in Hazleton is happening around the country. Neighborhoods transformed forever with no public debate. What's interesting is where this is not happening, in the neighborhoods where the people who make these decisions live. Here's some numbers. In Storm Lake, Iowa, only a tiny percentage of the population was foreign-born just 25 years ago. Now more than half of all residents of Storm Lake don't speak English at home. Hamtramck, Michigan had 2 Bangladeshi residents in 1990. Today, that city is majority Muslim. Fewer than 40% of the people who live there speak English at home. In his CNN piece, Ron Brownstein suggests this whole conversation is about white fear. Liberals often say that. Almost always they say that, probably to hide the truth of it, which is that the starkest effects of mass immigration don't take place in white neighborhoods. They take place where native-born African Americans live. For example, not so long ago, Compton, California, the famous Compton, was the largest black community west of the Mississippi. Today, only a third of Compton's population is African American. The rest is Hispanic. That's huge change. That's massive dislocation. Nobody talks about it. People like Ron Brownstein shout them into silence. But it's real, and for a lot of people who used to live there, it's traumatic. Now let's consider how the other half lives, the people who are making these decisions about immigration and demographic change. Are their neighborhoods changing like Hazleton and Storm Lake and Compton? Come on, you know the answer to that. LA County is now overwhelmingly Hispanic, but not upper-income Malibu, where the famous liberals live, where everybody supports these changes. Malibu is still 80% white, 87% white, actually. New York City, diverse place, of course, but not in Michael Bloomberg's neighborhood. His zip code is 82% white. It's less than 5% Hispanic. It's still 1985 where Michael Bloomberg lives. It probably always will be. That's the point. Same with Barack Obama's neighborhood here in Washington. That zip code is less than 8% Hispanic. Meanwhile, just across the river in the suburbs in Virginia, more Spanish-speaking every year. Obama loves that. He just doesn't want to live near it. Diversity for thee, but not for me. You see how it works, no matter what Ron Brownstein tells you. Lou Barletta was the mayor of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. He was harshly attacked, for trying to fight changes to his city. Today he represents Pennsylvania in Congress, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming up.
Good to be here, Tucker.
So I just want to restate, because I don't think you can say it enough, that I think most people like immigrants, because most immigrants are great, including the ones in your hometown. It's really a question of who gets to decide what the changes are and how big they are. And I always wondered, for a town like Hazleton, do the people who live there have any say in it at all?
No, they didn't have any say in it, Tucker, and I was at the forefront of that issue in Hazleton, where we saw a very sudden migration of newcomers coming into the city with no real explanation as to why it was happening and why Hazleton. And it is startling for a community to see a change like that. And to give you a good example, in the year 2000, English as the second language in the Hazleton area school district, the budget, it was $500. 5 years later, it was $1.5 million. So that just gives you a glimpse of how fast it happened.
So we're always told that when you bring in huge amounts of poor people from the third world with low levels of education, that you get much richer when you do that. That's the key to prosperity. No one who makes these decisions does it in their own neighborhood zones, but they're always saying it's going to make you richer. Has Hazleton become richer?
No, and quite the opposite. It becomes much more difficult when your income tax goes down. Our population grew by 50%, but our tax revenue stayed the same. And that's when we realized we not only had we had an illegal immigration problem on top of it all, but no, when people are coming in and are of the lower income or the lower end of the economic ladder, it's less tax money that you're getting, and it becomes more difficult to provide services.
So why do all the experts like Ron Brownstein at CNN say that you're a bigot if you have concerns? And they're telling you that you're richer and happier. Why won't you admit it?
Sure. I had this discussion. I was on a panel with Mayor Bloomberg at one time when he said, New York City's economy would crash if it didn't have illegal immigrants. Who would wash our dishes? Who would bus our tables? Who would clean our hotel rooms? But in small towns like Hazleton, where it's very transparent, it's an entire different story.
Yeah, it is. And I noticed that Michael Bloomberg's census tract in New York is like 5% Hispanic. So he's a hypocrite like the rest of them. You are not, though, Congressman. Thank you for joining us.